Full agenda, so I'll ask folks to keep things moving along as quickly as possible. Susan, would you please call the roll?
Yeah, thank you everyone for joining us at the December 3rd, 2014 Ann Arbor Downtown Development Authority meeting. A roll call: Cindy Clark.
Here.
Roy Collins.
Here.
Bob Gunzel.
Here.
Roger Hewitt.
Here.
John Lowenstein. Here. Al McWilliams.
Here.
John Moa.
Here.
Rishi Narayan.
Here.
Keith Orr.
Here.
Steve Powers.
Here.
Sandy Smith.
Here.
John Split.
Here.
We have 8 quorum. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Under audience participation, we have one person who's asked to be added to the speaker list, Chang Ming Fan. So if you want to throw his name in on that list of folks. The first one up on this is Francis Tedora. You have 4 minutes, and I'll give you a 1-minute signal.
Perfect. Great. So I'm here on behalf of the State Street Area Association to talk to you about the Ambassador Program. Yesterday was we have quarterly meetings now at the association. We met yesterday, and we had a great discussion about the program. 2 things that did come up. One was the discussion of the program that the Visitor and Conventions Bureau is doing, which is a Certified Tourism Ambassador. And we made note that that is a separate and distinct program from the DDA Ambassador Program. We're excited. We do believe that that will complement the DDA program, but we do not believe that it necessarily is a substitute. And that brought us to our second point, which was that the DDA Ambassador Program, as we've seen in other cities, many of us have traveled not just to Grand Rapids, but to other cities, and we've seen it in action. We see that it is eyes on the street of people walking around. And here in Ann Arbor, we have so many diversified groups in our city. They come here for a variety of reasons. I was outside Walgreens the other day and heard about 3 different languages being spoken, and none of them were English. And I think that's an awesome thing about our downtown, because we're so small, yet we have that vast diversity here. And I think an ambassador brings to us the ability to tie those things together, to be that one person in a uniform on the street that anybody knows they can go to for any kind of help or assistance that they might have, or guidance, or an understanding of how the town functions, where they need to be, when, and so on. And that was what we felt was so important to the DDA program. And so we did take a vote, and unanimously, 11-0, we voted in favor for the program. So we definitely wanted to bring that forward and share that with you, that State Street is very much behind this program and looking forward to it actually happening and coming to our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Maggie Ladd, please.
Hi, I'm here on behalf of South University Area Association, and I couldn't agree more with what Francis had to say. Our membership are squarely behind this ambassador program. I would reiterate, it's a completely different program than the one that the Convention and Visitors Bureau is working on. I think that there are a number of ways that this program will be able to enhance the downtown experience for our Ann Arborites, our businesses, and our visitors. And so I think that, we've been talking about this for over a decade, and this is the furthest that it's got. And those of us who have been to IDA conferences around the country have had the opportunity to see various ambassador programs working, and it seems to me that they do a very good job, and it's something that Ann Arbor could definitely benefit from. So I would urge you to vote in favor of this program. Thanks.
Thank you. Chang Ming Fan.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to write and talk. And also, I'm honored and humbled as American citizen, as a long time here in Ann Arbor, a long time business owner, entrepreneur. I fully support the ambassador program since day one. And also, thank you for the 2 speakers mentioned this again, represent the public demand and market need, and also especially down to the road, we want to build another to better city than others, which is very lag behind. Ambassador program started a decade ago, so therefore it's a 20th century program. It's not 21st century program, but we are in 21st century program, and right now we have to catch up. Thanks to Susan Party, and thanks to the board, thanks to people discuss in this open and transparent way and decide. I think we not only shouldn't back up, also we should move forward, because there are a lot of problems, and earlier I talked to Joe about this, mentioned about how we can bring the bridges, ambassador really linking the gap between have and have not, know and know not, support or not support, together to build the city better. I think this one part of it is the technology. So I like to give a quick talk, and if you can tell me how many minutes are left. Number one is that without technology, no such thing of 21st century, not is in the 20th century. The technology is not just the tangible and have to be intangible. Not just the people, which is great. We finally had the people on the street, which is not the touch-based, screen-based. We have the people on the street. But also we have to have permanent things on the street. That's why we want to go more detail for the Ambassador Light, the support Ambassador program. And that is thing which you need the technology. I do appreciate Al and Richie, which is represent the new mind, new ideas, and probably new energy to make this more workable. Second thing is that these kind of things need a lot of volunteerism. Sandy is the leader, and we need to work together. And this volunteerism not just simply lead to the physical things, programming, maintenance, and also work with the city, work with the police, work with residents and visitors. So that's one thing we'd like to continue contributing our technology and time. Now the last thing is that our society's biggest problem is miscommunication, no communication. Because of that, we have to have something over there on the street, and we have to have a group of people like you lead us, and also like the people who do not know ambassador program that really have problem, the decision, which is ambassador program is just chasing away to panhandler. This is not. And also DDA is not just simply finding people have new ideas come out. It's not. It's a lot of sophisticated discussion, a lot of debate. But finally, we work together and get this thing going. So I fully support. And also, if anything you want to know about Ambassador Light, we like to tell you more. And I'm going to have a meeting with Susan Polly, maybe 20 pages of PowerPoint. I'd like to show all of you as I present to Steve Power and John Hippage, our former mayor. So again, it's going to take time, a lot of risk, a lot of blame, but a lot of support. Thank you so much. My name is Chang-Ming Fan.
Thank you. We have one slot available if there's anyone else who'd like to speak to the board. Seeing none, let's move on. Reports from city boards and commissions. Ray Detter, Downtown Area Citizens Advisory Council.
Last night's Downtown Area Citizens Advisory Council members, former members, and also potential members gathered at my home. We usually do that every year in December for a holiday party. This is not a meeting, it's a gathering. A chance to talk about downtown issues with a lot of good food and good drink. And we encourage everyone to talk about what they would like to see downtown in the next year. That's usually our topic. Take a deep look into currently proposed possibilities. Last night, because of what was happening today, there was a particular emphasis upon the ambassador program. And we all seem to agree that the concept is worthwhile pursuing. But discussion of alternatives, like the individual approach of SAVCO that has been mentioned, to community volunteer work working with nonprofits, the countywide CVB Visitors Bureau certified program, paid for in part by participating businesses, or the Hired Ambassador program, sponsored by the DDA and operated in the streets, dealing with all sorts of issues, including perhaps trash, graffiti, triage for people who passed out, that sort of thing. Safety issues are definitely a part of it. And while there is an increased sense of safety and a variety of welcoming, informative communications from ambassadors as a possible part of of the program. We would like to achieve these goals at lesser cost and with less dependence on a hired bureaucracy. Feeling was strong in support for development and coordination of a diverse program using local volunteers, whether individuals or businesses. In the case of the DDA direction, many questions were asked about costs. We were thinking about $300,000 a year. What could we get for that? What could we get for $150,000 a year that would fit into an overall sort of program? What other projects in the downtown might not happen as a result of spending $300,000 on that particular program? We moved ahead with support for the Visitors Bureau program and the DDA concept. Is there an overlap? To what degree can we coordinate that instead of deal with it separately? But we also have an Ann Arbor Ambassador app. Someone brought that up last night. An app, not as impersonal as a one-to-one sort of relationship, that communicated to our ambassadors as well as the general public with regard to what it is that's going on at any particular point in the downtown. As one of our members said last night, kind of a concierge wherever you are. We are a friendly community. We know that we're a friendly community. Could we sponsor a promotion that developed an awareness of the need for every Ann Arbor citizen to be an ambassador? We've got the elements there. You all say, if somebody's looking at a map, I mean, you go to help them. We all do that. How can we encourage that more as a community? Along that line, whatever we do should involve not just downtown residents, but businesses, but all citizens in a program that everyone participates in creating. There should be a lot of public participation in our final decisions. There's lots of questions. Some are about priorities. As you can see from what I hear from what I'm saying, is that there was a lot of ambivalence expressed last night. Not in opposition to the concept, but emphasizing the importance to have this very well laid out. Do we give up repairing the streets on Fifth Avenue as a part of our previously developed program in order to do this? Are there other sorts of things, including retail, the parking structure, that we might have to give up? Those are priorities. You're going to have a retreat very soon. I think that it's very important to be patient, to go ahead with the project in terms of consideration, but also at the same time to consider all of the things that you may want to do as a board in the next year, as well as the ambassadors program. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any communications from DDA members?
John, I have a communication.
Yes.
I wanted to take a second to congratulate Al McWilliams. He has impending nuptials on Friday, and so I just wanted to take a second and say congrats. He's getting married, and we're all very happy for him. And you know, when else are you going to get an opportunity to tell like the world about this? So, congrats, Al.
Good luck with that.
In terms of DDA alumni, today's Ed Shaffron's birthday.
Oh, yeah.
It's a big celebratory day. Thanks, birthdays, everything.
I planned it that way.
So does anyone else have any exciting news you want to share?
We can like adjourn the meeting now, right?
Okay, seeing none, let's move on. Executive Director report. Susan.
I have a few items to bring to your attention. I hope they're all interesting. They're certainly interesting to me. The first is the status of 4th and William. We have met with city staff. We've gotten some input from them on what needs to be submitted for the construction permits. And we got some input on a construction plan. We're meeting later today with folks from the Main Street Area Association to get further input to make sure we minimize impact during our construction on that alley and on the polio lot. So that's moving forward. We think we'll be back with the board on a resolution to approve a contractor maybe in January sometime. We may be going out to bid sometime in the next few weeks. So just to give you a status report. On the street framework plan, we're going to hear a little bit more about it later, or then again, I may be stealing your thunder. We are, as staff, starting to call this project by a slightly different name to better describe what the outcome will be, as a downtown street design manual. Just to be very clear, it's not a plan, it's a manual. We've spent the last month or so meeting with various boards and commissions to get their feedback on where we are so far, including the Historic District Commission, the Design Review Board, the Planning Commission, and the Environmental Commission. And we're underway with a staff review to get the technical details down right. Our next advisory committee meeting is here at the DDA on Tuesday the 9th at 9. And my last comment about this plan and how incredibly important it is over the last few weeks I've had a chance to do some traveling And I was struck by, when you go to someone else's town, you see things in your own town a little differently. I was in Washington, D.C. I was in Washington, D.C., and they were talking about this great coup. They had come up with an idea to deal with these amazingly huge crowds. On one weekend, American University, Georgetown University, and George Washington University managed to put together their parent weekend on the same weekend. And the Georgetown sidewalks are 8 feet wide, and they were struggling to figure out how they were going to accommodate everybody. What they did was they took away the lane of parking, put up a barricade, they had overflow into the street, lanes of traffic kept moving, and it just worked. And so they were so excited about this flexible use of the right-of-way. And that flexible use of the right-of-way is part of what the framework plan is really exploring. I was also just in San Francisco visiting family for Thanksgiving, and in Union Square at the base of Stockton Street, there's construction going on. The bid in that area took that block and the block next to it, closed it off to traffic, and put AstroTurf down, this odd, who would have guessed, downtown, and created this green space, AstroTurf green space, for special events during the whole holiday season, sort of taking lemons and making lemonade by taking the closure and making it into a big temporary pedestrian mall. But those are examples of temporary uses of the right-of-way as we struggle with narrow sidewalk widths and how to accommodate special events. The framework plan is working to incorporate recommendations on how we do what we're already doing, but maybe continue to do it even better. Another one to bring to your attention, unrelated to streetscape, has to do with the DDA statute, and the state, we learned yesterday, another draft has been submitted to the state that would tweak the DDA statute. Some of the language submitted by Representative Colwell looks like what I had reported on earlier. For instance, where DDAs could be established, since that had never been clarified, what additional content needs to be on our website and what needs to be included in the annual report, and that we would be asked to hold an annual meeting to highlight accomplishments. It also retains an earlier change that she had submitted about creating the opportunity for the DDA to pay for additional services in the downtown beyond what is a standard amount of city services. Unclear what that looks like, unclear how that might be, whether that's going to stay in the final draft. The new draft just adds some interesting new items. One, on the list of things that the DDA can do, they've now added specific language about the DDA spending money on transit facilities and transit-oriented developments. So that is actually a very interesting update. It clarifies that if a DDA is being created, there's an opt-out from taxing authorities. They've added opt-outs for those special taxes. So for instance, the zoo millage or the DIA millage, at a time a DDA is being created, could opt out of a DDA tip capture. So there's that addition. And it removed some of the earlier stuff that hadn't had, I think, a lot of resonance for at least some of the committee members, including a TIF sharing at a certain point, a requirement that funds be spent within 5 years, but they did add additional language on reporting. So at this point, we knew that a meeting was scheduled in the Commerce Committee today. This was not on the agenda, and it's not clear when it will be actually brought forward for action, but there is new language. I'm going to end my report with 2 reminders. The first is we have a retreat, January 28th. I hope it's on your calendar. You'll be getting more information as details become available. And on your agenda at the end, those are going to skip out early, we need us to come up with a schedule of meetings for the year. There are some dates that we know already we have questions about. So for instance, if the retreat's on January 28th, we need to decide what we do for the Ops Committee meeting. We also know in November, because of the confluence of our meeting schedule and Thanksgiving, for instance, we've got to figure out our committee strategy, when we're meeting. So after this meeting, Jada and I will be getting a hold of you. We're going to need your help setting the dates so that we can post it at the city and have you guys vote on it at the next meeting. Thanks so much.
Great. Thank you, Susan. Approval of minutes. Would someone please?
I'll move the minutes. Be approved.
All those in support, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Subcommittee reports, Partnerships, Economic Development, Joan and Al.
All right, I will be handling the partnerships report. First, we have a resolution on page 16 to provide a partnerships grant for the 318 West Liberty project.
Would you like to move it?
I would like to move it.
I would like to second.
Support. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Sorry.
Discussion.
Oh, gosh, I'm sorry. Yeah. Why, sorry, I'm trying to move. Discussion.
We appreciate it. I can start off. The committee reviewed and discussed the grant request. Consensus was that the project meets the threshold we set forward in the grant program. It will add to downtown's residential density. It will redevelop a property located on a major corridor into the downtown. The recommendation is for a grant at 40% of the maximum, of the potential maximum. And that is due to the fact that that is about the amount of the water main which exists within the DDA district. So part of the water main installation happens outside. So yeah, this would pay for the portion of the water main inside the DDA district only. Other discussion.
John.
I'm interested in changing some language in the second resolve clause. I think it's confusing to talk about 25% or 40% of the maximum allowable. Our grant policy calls for an amount between 1 and 25%. This is simply a 10% grant, and just wondering if we can cross out 25%, substitute 10%, and cross out times 40%. I think that cleans it up.
Say that again. Section that has to be moved.
Changing 25% to 10, and then later it says times 40% if we just delete those words. Essentially, it's a 10% grant. It's a one year's worth of TIF grant.
You want to propose an amendment?
I thought that's what I was doing.
So ask if it's friendly.
Yeah.
And then the seconder, who's the seconder?
John
was.
Yes.
Okay.
So Al, is this a friendly amendment?
It is a friendly amendment. I believe that that math comes out to be the same. It's just an expression of it. Is that, people who know how to write these resolutions, is that an appropriate way of, is there some reason why we have to talk about TIF in that manner?
We know that Keith has
My only concern is that I didn't want to set a precedent that says we're doing infrastructure work outside of the DDA, and the 40% makes it clear that that's what we're doing. And it's pretty simple math. 40%, 25% of 40% is 10%. So I guess I prefer leaving it the way it is. It's not a major point, but that's my preference.
Sandy.
In recognition of that, I think with the 1, 2, 3, 4th whereas, we can leave that piece in place, and if you'd like to add in something in recognition of it, the percentage being within the district, and then leave the clarifying language for the calculator.
That would work.
So that's the why,
Right.
and the resolve is the action.
Yep, that works.
Yeah, and again, given that our grant policy reads between 1 and 25%, I just think that we ought to stick with that formula in our resolution versus a percentage of the maximum that we could get.
So we're putting.
It actually looks like it's already written out that way
Yeah.
in the whereas, in the fourth whereas.
If you look at the rest of the
It's
final sentence there.
Yeah, the final sentence says exactly.
Within the district.
Keith, is there anything you would like to see changed in that fourth whereas?
So we're taking, I guess, I prefer the clarity of it, but it does mention it, so
It's not your hill to die on.
Right, exactly, exactly.
Question
Yes, thank
for staff, does this resolution provide, though, does the resolution accomplish what Keith is
Yes.
wanting
It does.
for future? So we'll
Yeah.
know in the future what this means?
Absolutely. That's where the detail comes in here. Yes.
Okay, so I want to see if the amendment proposed by John is a friendly amendment.
Yes.
Table.
It is.
And yes. All right. Anything else we need to do to go ahead and move forward? No. All right. Seeing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those against? Thank you.
All right.
Folks have anything else you want to talk about?
I was not at the meeting, so I'll leave leave it to Al to, if there's anything else?
Just that the next committee meeting is Wednesday, December 10th at 11 a.m.
Great, thank you very much. Marketing Committee, Al McWilliams.
Hey.
You're on a roll.
I have another resolution too.
Oh,
This one's super hard.
Let's vote for resolution Rich today.
Aye.
I would like to move the resolution on page 25. Resolution to change the name of the DDA Marketing Committee to the DDA Communication Committee.
Do we have support?
Support. Discussion. I think the Communication Committee is more, in my world, that more explicitly talks about what it is we want to do, and also provides a little bit more direction to the committee's purpose, that we need to communicate what it is that's happening and what we do better and more, as opposed to marketing, which is a little more vague than I'd like it to be.
I think you're missing a few whereas as a result, so there's not enough.
So sorry.
You had that out a little bit.
Yeah.
Yes, you can.
Yeah.
You see some few examples coming.
Yeah, this might be an all-time short
Well,
resolution.
just a small point of order, does it require a resolution because it changes the bylaws, or?
No, at our annual meeting, we establish our committees, and so what we're doing here is we're saying, we're still keeping the committee, but we're just changing the name.
Right.
We're just being more formal than we may have been in the past.
Okay, and is that a good thing or a bad thing? I'm not exactly sure.
It's a thing. It's a thing.
It's a thing.
It's a thing.
Okay.
It's a clarifying
It's a
thing.
clarifying thing, yeah.
It's communicating.
It's communication.
Right. It moves us up on the alphabetical list.
This is all to get ahead of finance.
Yeah.
It's an internal housekeeping
Yeah.
issue, and I just, there's nothing wrong with it, I just
So
don't
does
know that
anyone,
it's necessary to have a resolution to change committees, but
so does anyone else have any keen concerns about this one?
I'm wondering what Al's professional expertise is to change names of things, of marketing committee, no, I'm just kidding.
All
He's the
right.
only one qualified to do that in this board, so.
So Russ, are you quite done?
All right, point well taken.
Sorry about that. That was unkind. Does anyone else have any concerns to express? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those kids. All right, moving on. Oh, you got another item? Data capture. Data capture.
Yeah, that's what we're working on. That's what the first task is going to be. And that I will be meeting with staff to put together a plan to put together a communication plan that we can discuss and then move forward with over the next couple months. I will be doing that at the next communication committee meeting, which will be Wednesday, December 10th at 12:30 p.m. So we will have a sketched out communication plan for the DDA at that point to talk about. So that'll be a great meeting that you'll want to come to.
So I just want to note on the agenda, it shows 12:30 a.m.
Oh, gosh.
So for those who are late night partiers,
You know Al, right?
Yeah.
Works with my schedule.
I think I wake up then. That's when I go to the gym, start my day.
all right, are we all set to move on? Any questions relating to marketing/communication? Finance.
Communication committee.
Communication.
Thank you.
Finance Committee, Rishi.
Now that I've been bumped to third in alphabetical order. So we have two items on our agenda from Finance Committee this month, or last month. You have on page 26, unaudited 2014 operating revenues and expenses report. One nice big one-pager sticking out at the bottom of your packet, so it's easy to find. And really, this is just a synopsis of operating revenues and expenses. It doesn't include capital costs, maintenance, capital repairs, things like that. Just kind of meant to show the cash flow throughout the parking structures. And we kind of went over this in a little bit of detail at the finance committee meeting, and started paying attention to some of the parentheses numbers, because those are negative and eyes are always drawn to those, and kind of talked through them a little bit. And essentially, everything looks correct, everything looks right, what we had planned on. We have some structures that turn out after turn out a little bit negative when it's all said and done after debt payments. And the reasoning behind that is before the debt service is being paid off, structures they lose money, and then after it's paid off, they generate significant money. So compare your Liberty Lane versus your Ann Ashley, for example, or compare First and Washington, which just opened, with Liberty Square. So there wasn't anything alarming by any means, even though you might see some big negatives. And in fact, we had some conversations about possibly looking at, do we need to pull ahead some of our payment plans, and would it be advantageous to pay things up early, and we were going to do some research into that for the next couple meetings. So that's kind of the quick synopsis. This is unaudited, and like I said, this is just a snapshot. I'll lead that into the next thing I would talk about, which is the 2014 audit, which I don't have anything to report on because we just received the draft. Mr. Morehouse is reviewing for errors and going over it. We tried to get him to work faster, but he's pretty slow. And he has graciously invited the auditor to come to our next finance meeting, where we're going to really get into the weeds with him, I think, a little bit, and learn my first audit. So I might as well get some education out of it. And then we'll report back in January with good news, I'm sure. So that's kind of the scoop with that. Any questions or thoughts or anything I missed? Roger?
No, doing fine.
Thank you. I look to you for support. And okay, so just because we have so many people that attend our finance committee meetings, we keep changing it, just try to shake people. So we've moved it again for this Friday. For this time, it's Friday, December 19th at 9:30. Hopefully we can't really manage with all the people that come. So before the holidays, and that's when we're actually meeting with auditors. So if you're interested in such things, come join us.
So Rishi, you could rename it the Allocation Committee.
Yeah.
Bump you right up to the
A1 Finance Committee.
The Yard Work Committee.
111A.
Yeah.
All right, moving on. Operations Committee, John Split, Keith Orr, and Roger Hewitt.
I guess I'm first off. On page 27, there is a resolution to extend the time frame under a previous grant to fund the phase 2 of the connector study. The connector study was actually supposed to be completed by now, but this fall, at the request of the university, we have delayed that while the new administration is in place and up to speed, and they review the status of that. So we have not completed on time. We expect it would probably be completed in the first quarter of the coming year. And since we have a sunset clause in our rules on grants, this has reached a sunset clause, and this is just extending it to allow that study to be completed. So I'd like to move the resolution.
Second.
So one quick question. I don't see where it says how long it's being extended. Do we need to have something that defines the length of the extension?
Sure.
No.
Why don't
It's a detail.
Why don't we extend it to the end of this fiscal year, June 30th, 2015? What?
Is that enough time?
Should be.
All right. Does everyone understand that what's being changed? Any other concerns, issues here? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those against? Next item, we have a resolution approved.
That would be me, the resolution to approve the a lease amendment for the First and Huron parking lot, otherwise known as the Brown Block, is on page 29. This is a 3-year extension of current lease. We've been, I believe, going year to year with these, the 3-year extension is new to this, but I think that the Operations Committee is recommending approval of this, and everybody is looking favorably upon the 3-year extension. It basically puts in language that the yearly increases in rent will be either whichever is greater 3% or the CPI. Again, we think that that's a reasonable request.
Would you like to move this item?
Yes, I would like to move it.
Support?
Support. Any concerns, questions, etc.? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those against? Thank you very much.
I would like to move the next resolution, which is a resolution to, the same thing, lease extension on the 5th and Huron parking lot, which is the lot across the street.
Support?
This extension's on page 31. Same situation, 3-year extension, where we've been going year to year. In this case, the yearly increase is a bit less. It is, I believe, is it 2%? 2%. 2% or CPI. And again, the committee is recommending approval of this lease extension.
Any questions or concerns? Seeing,
Just
sorry.
a comment for the audience here and who are at home, that both of these lots have an option to be terminated. So although we're doing a 3-year extension, each of the leases carry an option should the owner want to develop. Then it's I believe it's a 30-day notice to the DDA, and it can terminate it. So by this extension does not necessarily mean that that's a parking lot for 3 years. Just want to point that out.
Thank you. Any other questions or concerns? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those against? Thank you.
Next is resolution to object with conditions to the addition of the 350 South Avenue lot to the parking system. I would like to move that resolution.
Second?
And it is on page 32. And it is a rather lengthy resolution. As you know, or may or may not know, under the parking agreement, we have the right to object to this lot being added back to the city system after it has been removed. On page 32, down in the second to last whereas, there are 3 options that we can take here. The third is to object to the addition with conditions, and that's what the committee is proposing. The conditions are on the next page, page 33, and essentially we are, by passing this resolution, we would object to having this lot added back to the system without these conditions being met. These are our conditions. It also sets forth that the Operations Committee heads, Roger Hewitt Keith or myself, and our executive director would be responsible for negotiating these conditions.
I've got some changes to the language that I'd like to propose. They're all on page 33. The conditions at the top, which is number 2, the final bullet, I would like to strike, the DDA will agree to waive, and add in the words, in recognition of the lost parking revenues from nearby garages due to patrons shifting their parking to the 350 South Fifth Avenue lot. I'd like to cross off the if. I believe probably a comma would be useful there. The city will agree to waive its 17% portion from parking revenues generated on this lot. So again, in total, it's in recognition of the fact that we're gonna lose revenue because it will, in a sense, draw people out of the system. We're asking that the negotiators ask the city to waive its 17% of the proceeds that typically would come, and that's all by the contract. Was that clear?
Would you
Yep. So
read it through so
in
that
recognition,
recording it?
Yep, in recognition of the lost parking revenues from the nearby garages due to patrons shifting their parking to the 350 South Fifth Avenue lot, the city will agree to waive its 17% portion from parking revenues generated on this lot. I would like that bullet, those changes mirrored in the final bullet in the second result clause, so they read exactly the same. And I do believe that comma after lot is useful. I've got a couple more changes. Would we like to take them individually?
I think so.
Yeah, I think so. So would you take that as a friendly amendment?
I would.
Who was the seconder, Joe?
Agreed. Okay. If I may?
Yes.
The final whereas clause, I don't believe is the outcome of what we were talking about in committee. And so with that, I would like to create that, instead of a whereas, is to wrap that into an additional bullet. And I would like it to be I'd like it to be a suggested pledge of the revenues from the owner's share of the profits that come from this, rather than a personal contribution. That doesn't seem like that's an appropriate ask. So what I would like to say is, instead of the word make, insert pledge, I would strike the word personal, and instead of own, I would put proceeds. So the final bullet would read, whereas in addition, the Operations Committee recommends that the DDA urge the owners of 4th LLC to pledge a significant contribution of their proceeds to the city's Affordable Housing Trust Fund.
Sandy, I'm sorry, you wanted to strike the whereas?
Yeah.
Correct, it becomes a bullet in the negotiation.
Is it a bullet
Did
under?
I read whereas?
under the-
Yeah,
Okay.
so just say
So
in
strike the
addition.
whereas, right.
Right, but would it go under number 2 above or bullet item below? For
Actually,
negotiation?
it would be in both.
Okay. Does everyone follow what Sandy's?
So that becomes a bullet point under number 2 and is repeated as a bullet point under the second
The
result.
paragraphs are repeated, it makes sense to repeat it.
Could you read it again?
I can. In addition, the Operations Committee recommends that the DDA urge the owners of 4th LLC to pledge a significant contribution of their proceeds to the city's Affordable Housing Trust Fund.
That sounds like urging and not a specific condition. Was that your intent?
From my understanding, these are points to negotiate. So, if you would like it to be stronger, I would, if you would like to take the word pledge out, I think it might be stronger.
But your intent is, well, I'm fine with the way it is.
thoughts on this item? Is everyone clear on the suggested change in language and location? So you take this as a friendly amendment?
Yep.
Yes.
All right.
All right, I got one more.
One more. Go
All right.
for it, Sandy. You're on a roll.
Yes, I'd like to add an additional resolve clause. Resolved
Where?
at the bottom.
Okay.
The final negotiated contract will be returned to the full board for ratification.
DDA board.
Yes.
Susan, were you able to catch that?
And mainly because we're sending off a crew for negotiations, we've given them parameters that we're suggesting. It's quite possible that they could come back with a contract which has none of these bullet points incorporated in it and said we did our best. I would like the board to have an opportunity to weigh in and say, do we still want to go forward? We didn't get anything we wanted, do we still want to go forward? So rather than sending 3 people out to negotiate and be happy with those possible terms, I request that the full board has a chance to ratify the contract.
John, would you take that as a friendly amendment?
Yes.
Joan?
Yes.
All right. Any other discussion on this item? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those against?
Opposed?
No. Opposed? No.
Can I see the show of hands? Thank you.
Over to, next item is resolution authorized establishment of the downtown district.
Yes. You turn to page 36. Have a resolution to authorize the establishment of a downtown ambassador program. And I would like to move that resolution for the board, for the committee.
Support.
Before I get into this at all, in discussion with the executive board, we suggested some changes to the last resolve clause. What it currently states is that authorizes the operations committee to formulate the program and report back to the DDA the details of such as which company will be hired to the operation of this program and the kind of metrics that we use to assess the program's impact. I'd like to pass around proposed change to that last resolve clause.
Aren't you fancy doing this all like you're writing it at
That
was, I know, it was inequitable passing.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, you got it.
As you can read, what we're suggesting is that it is changed to, thank you, Susan. The DDA authorized the operations committee to formulate the details of the program, select a recommended vendor, negotiate a proposed contract and scope of services, and bring this contract back to the DDA for approval. You probably should say DDA board for approval. So what we are authorizing here is $300,000 a year for 3 years for ambassador program. We will work out all the details in the contract and bring that contract back to the board for approval. So there will be a chance to discuss all the details of the program when it comes back. This is something we as the operations committee, and I think just about everyone on the board has been discussing for, well, certainly in detail for over a year now. It has been a very thorough, very well thought out discussion. I think a very respectful discussion. I think there are people on both sides of this issue on whether it is an appropriate thing for the DDA to be doing or a necessary thing. But I think the process has been excellent. And again, very respectful of everyone's opinions. I obviously have been the one who has been championing this along with other members. I feel that there's a significant gap in the connection between the people who are out on the street and the many governmental institutions that have some responsibility for all those people, whether they be social services, whether they be police, whether they be medical, whether they just be informational. And I feel very strongly this is a gap that needs to be filled in our downtown, and the DDA is the one organization whose responsibility it is exclusively for downtown. And I think it is an appropriate, although a new step, an appropriate step for this organization to be taking. And I want to thank everyone who's participated in the process.
John, point of order.
Yeah.
Should we be approving the new language? I consider it to be friendly.
Okay.
And the person who's proposing was.
Yeah, I just wanted
So.
to let Roger kind of speak on it, just to
Me too.
kind of give you.
Thank you. Yes,
So-
I definitely, I'm obviously proposing it, and
So the new language, do we take as a friendly amendment?
John?
Yes.
And you wanted to add a word, DDA board.
Yes, I did want to add the word DDA board in there, so it's clear.
Right up to
And there's an extra "and" after approval. I think that you just need to
Just
keep
a typo.
just keep striking out
No.
and untyping.
Any other, Al?
So I am one of the folks who is respectfully on the other side of the issue. I'm not going to be supporting it, and I just wanted to kind of go over the points and the reasons why. The biggest one is I don't see the problem being fixed still. After all, it was a very thorough discussion, and I came to some committee meetings so that I'd make sure I was up on the stuff, and it's $1 million vote, and I look at the list on the wall, and when we had our retreat last year, it came up very close to the bottom of the priority list. Once it was in the discussion, but once it got sorted out with all the other stuff that we put on the wall, it just didn't. There were other things that were deemed more important use of that kind of resources. And even at that time, we were assuming a much lower price tag as well, I think. So that's the big reason, is I think there's some, looking at our list of priorities, it's just not quite at where I see $900,000 investment being. Another point, and this is just a subjective one, is that I actually don't think that ambassadors on the streets really fits where I see downtown going. I think it's a little sterilized for me in Ann Arbor. I think Ann Arbor's got a great, safe, fun downtown, and there are lots of people on the streets that are just organically there. And I think it's just a little too far, not completely, but a little outside of where I see my enjoyment and my love of Ann Arbor coming from, which is, finding that balance between safe and fun, but also still maintaining a little bit of personality and a little bit of weirdness. It's a little over the line for me. And then finally, there's a very minor concern where when I'm looking 3 years down the road and possibly beyond that, programs like this, especially where I don't see a lot of direct purpose right now, I wonder where the maintenance of that, if we get 2 years into this and these ambassadors are kind of just standing around without much to do, I think there's a great deal of oversight and maintenance, not from a financial standpoint because we've committed the budget and we have a vendor that's doing this, but just from an oversight perspective of making sure that these ambassadors are actually doing something and this vendor is actually performing, which I think will be extra challenging because I don't necessarily see, even right now, the $300,000 a year problem we're solving on the streets. So those are my big reasons. And that's it.
Joe, did you? Keith?
Well, let's see. I had started off many years ago as one who liked the idea of the ambassador program. And there may be a time in Ann Arbor's future where it would be of value. But right now, I look at that at it more as an amenity than a necessity. And exactly the point you made about our decision about priorities that are up there. It was only really taken on by, we had broke up into 3 tables, and there was only one table that really came back with it at all. And at the time, I believe it was at $100,000 level, so that's 1/3 of what we're talking about here. And given it within that context of the money we have to spend, as opposed to an unlimited budget or looking at this without, there's so many other things that are infrastructure related, and that's not to say that this can't be seen as an infrastructure improvement, but things like finishing the 5th and Division project, things like the State Street program, things like the link, things like a express bus from Ypsilanti. All of those are things that also cost money, and that I think we're all higher on our priority level, and I would fear that this would take resources from that. So I've taken sort of that turn from, oh, this would be really great, to imagining these people running around on segways, to feeling like this is not the best use of our resources at this time. So I'll be voting no.
Russ?
So I don't want to pretend to speak for Rich Sheraton. I have not consulted him on this matter at all, but he said something to me a few years ago after Menlo Innovation moved into the Liberty Square, basement of the Liberty Square parking structure. And he was, his organization talks about systems, and as he looked at the downtown systems, there was a lot of dysfunction. So some of the parking meters have old-fashioned parking meter heads, some of them have the new heads. Some streets are one way, and there's, downtown is a confusing environment to a lot of folks. Al knows that marketing needs to be directed not at the people that are most familiar and comfortable in the space, but at the people who are kind of on the edges. They're willing to give it a try, but they need a little help and encouragement to make it through. And I see the ambassador program as an opportunity to essentially provide something of a patch to those system dysfunctions, whether they be just helping folks on the street negotiate the parking systems, whether it's to point them towards a parking structure, to help them with a parking meter if they're having trouble with that, to take a look around for things that are on the street that can be picked up and should be picked up, and I hope indeed they would pick up many of those things themselves. But we have lots of holes and departmental boundaries and things that keep the system from working completely in a completely integrated way. When we talked about this at the State Street meeting yesterday, Jim Kostiva said, well, wouldn't it be better just to address the systems? And the answer is clearly yes, it would be. However, we have a large and complicated bureaucracy that involves multiple governmental units, whether they be the university and the city and the county and various departments within the university and union labor and non-union labor and all kinds of things that prevent this kind of system integration that might be an optimal solution. So this opportunity to provide, to be customer focused on people that are visiting or that are new to the area, to have the opportunity to make the area be more affirming and available and easy to use for those people. I see that this is a distinct opportunity. It certainly is an investment of money, and if you're going to be successful in anything, it seems that you need to take the bold moves to do them. I'm not as enthusiastic about the decisions that are made at retreats like the ones that we hold, because they do tend to be kind of surface and not very deeply and well thought out. This has been talked about for many years, has been discussed at length at various committee meetings, which is much, much more representative of where the thoughts go than a few hours people spend shooting off their mouths and writing things on boards. So I'm a rather enthusiastic supporter of this strategic, what I see as a strategic direction for the DDA, and I think it has a lot of merit.
So I kind of, Ray, I'm going to steal your line because I think it was really good. I'm not in opposition to the concept, but you know, for me, it's all in the details. And I think actually what you said, Russ, was really spot on. This is going to be tailored to not the people that know downtown, but the fringe. And so, like, prior to my financial, guru experience, when I was on the marketing committee, we talked a lot about how are we going to get those people from not far out of town, New York's, LA's, California's, but the Plymouth, the Canton, or whatever, and how are we going to get them here, and how are we going to affect them. And so I think it's less about like what we talked about in our retreat, and more about what can we get the most impact for our dollar for. And I doubt anyone would be able to say that this is going to have short-term, immediate, measurable impact. And maybe you do, but I think this is a long-term investment, and the problem with this a long-term investment is, now my switch back over to the finances, that our next 3 years we're in a little bit, we're tighter than we have been in the past, and we have some structural things that we're all in agreement that we want to address, and some other, some things that Keith mentioned. I'll specifically mention some street framework stuff at South U that I know is really important, that needs to get on the docket, I think, sooner. And so, I'm only looking at this from a impact standpoint of short-term versus long-term, and I think that this is a long-term benefit for sure. And where this is going to come back is when people came and had a great time in Ann Arbor and go back and tell other people about the great time they had in Ann Arbor, and that residual display is going to take some time to follow through. And so the problem is that I don't think this is even $1 million. I think this is multi-million-dollar, because I don't think we're going to be able to find out what we need and make like strong decisions after 2 or 3 years. I think that this is going to be like, once we go into it, to really get the fruition of what this is going to be, we're going to have to be able to commit to it for a longer period of time. And if we were to go through with this and spend $1 million, it's a little bit of sunk cost fallacy, but if we were to go through with this and do $1 million, then if we were going to make a decision at year 3 about whether it was worth it, I don't think we'd have enough information to make that decision. So, I mean, at that point, if this gets voted through at year 3, my argument would probably be like, we need to do it a little bit longer because we need to get more information back. We need to give people time to come back. So, I think that for me, I think Russ hit it on the head. You said it right. That's the type of person we're going to win over. The question is, when is that impact going to happen? And so, since I think that impact is going to happen in the long term, and we have other more pressing short-term things, that's why I think this is not the right time. And actually, Ray mentioned it. Like, maybe there's not an impending weather season or time that we have to make the decision by. This could even be tabled to next year after our next retreat. Although Russ may not like the next retreat, but after the next retreat, and we don't have to decide on this right this second. So maybe 1 year is all we need to really get our heads around it. So it's not, the concept is great. I was one of the people that went to Grand Rapids and was really wowed by it. Just like Keith said, we were like, well, this is really cool. I can feel that, and you can definitely feel that it has some awesome value, and will fix patch systems. The question is how quickly will we see that impact? So that's my 2 cents.
Sandy.
So I would be in favor of more exploration. I know Roger has done a lot of work on this and feels confident going forward. What I don't see outlined, I still don't see, is a clear vision of what this program is really going to accomplish. So if it's about making somebody from Plymouth comfortable enough to come back, I gotta wonder who the hell's on the sidewalk, because it's jammed. It's busy. There's people here. They're coming from Plymouth. I guarantee it. So if that's what we're trying to do, I got to see that we're still trying to figure out the data on how to collect this and measure these things. So I don't know I don't see that that's being the point, and I don't see taking money out of the parking system to pay for this is going to correct some of the problems that Russ addressed with multiple kinds of meter heads that are confusing to people. My God, let's take $1 million and replace all the meters so they're all exactly the same. Over 3 years, we could have the whole thing done. So I don't think that, I'm not in support of it at all. But I would say that if it's going to go forward, I would like to see much tighter metrics about what it is we're trying to accomplish. What does success look like? At the end of year one, how do we deal with our contractor and say you've accomplished these goals already or you haven't accomplished them? And certainly at the end of 3 years, how do we know that it's a success? It's something that just, we take it away because we don't feel like it was a success. Then everybody screams at the DDA because we've taken away a valuable program. My God, bring back the ambassadors. I can't tell you how many times people said, well, where's the link? I really wanted that circulator. It's like, even if they never wrote it, they wanted it once it was gone. So, as a minimum, I think that we need to postpone this and continue to put the framework in place of what it looks like. The reasons why I'm really opposed to this is that I don't think that we have this problem of, I don't think that the problem is as grave as it's been proposed to us. I think that we've got a successful downtown in many rights. I think that an opportunity for a volunteer program to start would be fantastic. We could have a reporting app that people can put on their phone. We can have an army of volunteers. We could just with the amount of money that we have laid out here, we could create a program that was strong and robust, and if you saw something, you could report it with a simple thing on your phone. And everybody could do that. Or you could have the volunteers do it. You say, what can volunteers do? How could a ragtag group of people put together a program that's robust enough to interface with the DDA and the downtown and the problems that we have? And you look at successful programs that, if you go to the airport in Austin, Texas, you're greeted by a corps of volunteers. It's a really confusing airport. They tell you, there's 3 or 4 of them in every corner. They got the 10-gallon hats on, and they're there to help you navigate. Central Park is managed by a conservancy, which is all volunteers. Central Park, you don't think that they've got an issue with safety and cleanliness and perception of whether it's okay to go walk through the woods in Central Park? It's all managed by volunteers. The city's own parks department could not exist, could not be the quality park system that it is. And it's huge compared to our number of citizens and the square footage that we have, the square miles that we have in the city. It's all run by the Natural Area Preservation. A small staff guiding an army, 10,000 hours of volunteer time a year. I mean, it's huge. So I think that that's something that we've got to look at as an opportunity before we go into something as grave as this. And I think that the dollar amount we've talked about opportunity cost, and I heard that around the table, that what else could we do, is that we're going to give something up. Something else is not going to happen because we're doing this. And at $300,000 a year, at $1 million, does that mean that the brick streets in Carytown don't get paved? Or they get paved over, we just let the city pave them instead of putting the bricks back? Is that what people want? So the retreat can be a useful tool to help the board in total to prioritize where we spend this kind of money. $1 million is a lot of money. On an annual basis, if we're trying to talk about helping people and help connect Port and STV, whatever it is, these different organizations together, if we're trying to do that, $300,000 a year is enough to fund sustainable revenue services for 60 people, right? So that's enough. So not just the housing, but the part that gives the services so that people can stay in the houses, right? And so that costs about $5,000 a year per person. So that's 60 people. If we're really worried about the people in the street and connecting these things, let's just take the money and give it to the county. Just go, here's $300,000 a year, help us manage what's happening on our streets, because that's the real issue. So those are just, it's a tip of the iceberg why I'm not gonna support this today. But I will support a postponement.
Joan?
I think I started out when we first looked at this in the position that Sandy is, where I was really I didn't see the need for it, and I wanted to define what's the problem before we start looking for a solution. But I think as we've gone more into looking at the different companies that might be involved and how we might oversee this kind of program, and Susan's been going around talking to these various groups, and some of the others of us have too, I have moved more over to the side of that it could be useful. I don't think it's the most useful thing ever, but I think if we wait to see what's the most useful thing ever we could do with the money, we would be postponing a lot of stuff, because we have talked about this quite a lot. In the nonprofit world that many of us have been involved in, we know that we often ask volunteers to do stuff. And sometimes that can be even more expensive for a number of reasons. For one, if we had a volunteer service, we'd have to have a volunteer coordinator, because we're not gonna ask Susan or Amber or Jada to be in charge of calling volunteers and making sure they get there and working all of that kind of stuff out. And if there's an app, somebody's gotta develop an app. One of the groups that we looked at already has an app developed that does this kind of thing. So I don't think that the expense is necessarily that much less by doing volunteers, and I think if you get volunteers to do things, it's because you have something that's sort of optional, because volunteers are not always very dependable. So I think if we look at it as something that's not optional, but as something that's needed, then we ought to look into a professional kind of situation. So you know, we do have volunteers all the time who are handling this kind of case by case, and one of them sits on our board, who is Cindy, who has a very big glass storefront, and almost every day probably sees somebody that she needs to go out and help. Or somebody who wanders into her store that needs help. And all those people are out there doing that kind of volunteer stuff that they would rather not do, but I think there's a need. And especially with changes that have, even since we started talking about all of this, there have been some real changes to the downtown in terms of the kind of the macrobiome that exists, or ecosphere, as some people talk about it, in the downtown, and the change in population, where you've got so many different kind of groups melding together that in a sense you need someone who orchestrates some of this stuff. And I think that some of that would be useful, and I think that's although it's not a huge problem, I think if you look at what's the problem for which we're seeking a solution, I think that's it, is the coordination of all the different kinds of people who are wondering about the downtown and might need some help or might need some organization. So I think it would be useful. I don't think it's the most useful thing, but I think it's worth doing. I think it doesn't say in the resolution, Roger, but it's understood that this would come from parking revenues, isn't it?
Correct.
So many of the other things that we talk about doing come from the TIF side, which you know, we have different leeway about handling, and some things that are already set aside on the TIF side that we will do at some point. And there's new building going on downtown, so I think that the TIF is likely to increase. Our parking revenues are also increasing every year, so even though it's, as you say, Rishi, maybe a tight period, we've gone through these little tight periods before and been able to make expenditures where they're needed, knowing that the next year could show a lot more revenue. So I think it's worth doing.
I spoke already, so I'm going to wait until everybody else goes.
John?
I'm going to be supporting the resolution. Getting to Joan's point, yes, there are other things that we need to spend money on, but this is parking money. It is an extension of the service that we already provide within our garages, which I think people appreciate. It is 1.5% of our parking revenue, which means that it costs people a couple of cents an hour, or a couple of cents an hour in revenue is going towards this program. I don't think that that's necessarily unreasonable. Russ says this is a patch. I see it more as a weaving together of other services that are being provided but aren't being provided with sufficient coordination. I would hope that as this program progresses, that there will be more coordination going on between city services, county services that are already downtown, and hoping that this enhances them. And I am very much in favor of hiring professionals to do this versus volunteers. I just think that a volunteer program is very difficult to sustain, and sure, you get a level of commitment for a period of time, but I think that's hard to sustain over the long run. And I like Rishi's comment that this is strategic. I think it's strategic as well. I think this is a strategic organization, and I think that that's what we should be looking at.
I'll be supporting the resolution. I have a question for Roger, if that's appropriate at this time.
Please.
The resolution refers to details, and you have a couple of examples of the details. Would it be helpful, and some additional details have been brought up during the board's discussion, but before leaving here, I think it'll be, if it passes, it'll be important that there's a clear understanding of the details, a clear understanding of what type of metrics, what is it that we're going to be measuring, or you're going to be in the same position that some believe you're in right now, where we really don't know what we're doing as a board with this program. So again, I don't know if that's appropriate now, if you want to continue the discussion of board members, but I think before we need to, if we're going to proceed, we need to, as a board, talk about the details.
You know, I tend to agree with you. I would like Roger to address this. You know, part of, I think, the feeling is that we've been banding this about for a long time now, and it's taken up a lot of committee time. So I think there is some, you know, it's important to kind of deal with this one way or the other here as best we can. And so I think anything that helps to clarify exactly what folks have in mind moving forward would be helpful.
Roger, before you go into details, because I'm sure there'll be a lot of details, I want to make one point from a finance committee thing, that this is one of the focuses of the finance committee this year, is to make sure that we understand, to kind of like expand on John's point about this is, whatever you said, 2% of our revenue, but it is a much larger percentage of our actual available budget to spend on things. Because although our revenue might be $20 million, we don't have $20 million to parking money to spend. So I just want to bring it up as just a point, because that's one of the things that at Finance Committee we talk about, and we want to make sure that people know. And we don't have that sheet. That was part of the sheet, and that's my fault. But I want to make sure that it's in every board package, so that when we talk about these things, like this is the available money per year that we have not already committed, or is not part of maintenance and cost and expense. So that's just a fiscal point of order. Sorry, Roger, go ahead.
Actually, we had in the original last resolve clause, kind of metrics that we use to assess programs' impact. That kind of came out when we did the revision. We could certainly put that back in as an additional requirement for the operations committee to make sure it's in our contract that comes back to the board. I don't know if that's going to address everything, but I think we've heard the concern about metrics very clearly, and I'm fine putting that additional clause back in if that's going to address the issue. Certainly, the operations committee knows that it's going to have to address the metrics issue very clearly in this contract.
Sandy.
I would ask for a postponement to the next meeting until that was clearly defined in front of us, that we just take another month and really make it clear, because this is a big step, and to go through with half the board, slightly less than half the board, not on board, I think is a mistake. And I think that if you just take a little bit more time, maybe it's a month, maybe it's two, I don't know, but to have it clearly defined, this is, I mean, in the packet, all I have is the resolution. I don't have, if I had not been attending every committee meeting, I would have no idea what your goals are and what success looks like. And I don't think that that's good policy. And I don't think it's good process. So I would like to have, you know, a clear definition. I'd like, you know, this is the problem. This is how we're gonna resolve this, and this is what success looks like. And then I think that we can have some more support behind this if we're heading down this trail. But so I would move to postpone this to the first meeting in January, to the only meeting in January.
Is there support for this motion on the floor?
I'll support to see more details.
Anyone want to have any discussion on that?
I will not be voting in favor of the postponement. I think that we have had a lot of discussion on this issue. I'm not sure that postponing it and coming up with some of these things is going to probably change anybody's mind at this point. And I may be wrong about that, but I certainly feel like we have discussed the issue enough that I'm ready to vote on it.
Rishi?
So even though I'm not in favor of the program, I think it'll be tough to come back in with holidays and in such a short time, first meeting of the new year, and actually having metrics. I actually think the metrics are really difficult. So I think that would be a really large burden, and I don't think it would be possible. It would be very difficult. Roger would not be able to enjoy his holiday, you know. So and even if it was straight, you know, no holidays in between, I think it'd still be difficult. And so, you know, if I think about postponement, I think about we need to give it more time. But and that's just only to say, because you specifically said the first meeting in January. But and I understand we have been talking about it for a long time, so maybe it's one of those things where we have to go forward. So I don't think it makes sense necessarily for postponement, but so just to kind of be on the other side, saying like we probably need to start thinking about moving forward on this topic to get it out of the way.
Any more discussion specifically about the postponement?
I guess if I were to look at a postponement, I'd want to put it to February, not for those reasons, but because it would put us after our retreat and whatever issues there are about the retreat. Certainly, one of the things it does is it gives us a chance to say, how do we want to apportion our funds, which is, you know, what we came up with. And yes, it was just one afternoon, but it's the only time where we really say, where we really prioritize where what limited money we have and how we're going to spend. That being said, I probably would not support a postponement just for the reasons that we've all had a lot, chance to discuss it, and I think most of us have some sense of where it is in our priorities. So I would not support a postponement.
So, may I ask, would, Sandy, you want to modify this to define February? Are people looking for sort of better definition on what a postponement means?
You know, I would absolutely, I don't care when it comes back, as long as it comes back in a better form. When we talk about having a lot of discussion about this, I know that these discussions have been going on, but I have not been at every operations committee. Now, things come through committee, I understand that, but I've been to an occasional operations committee. I tend to go to partnerships and marketing, so it's a lot to ask for a volunteer to have been sitting for a year through the operations discussion and then having no backup whatsoever. I mean, this is This is all that there is, and I feel that there really should be more depth to this. It's $1 million, it's $900,000, and if it takes a couple of months to come up with something that is a little bit more meat on the bones, then so be it. It's probably not gonna change my mind anyways, so I
let's
agree
get
with
back.
that.
Let's get back to then. We need to vote on whether or not to postpone.
Yeah, I am fine if it's February or you know, whatever. That's
Are
a friendly
folks
amendment.
Clear enough on what friendly amendment? Who seconded?
I'll second.
Sure. Accept this friendly amendment. All those in favor of a postponement, say aye.
Aye.
Can I see hands, please?
All those against? Looks as though the nays carry the day. So, back to the original discussion. Anyone else want to weigh in? Bob?
Great points have been made, so I won't remake them, but to me, the difficulty is in saying that I think this has true possibilities. I agree with Russ. I think it has an opportunity to make us better as a system and pull that coordination together. I think that has real possibility. I think it has a real possibility of welcoming people to our community because we have a great community and we want folks to come here from wherever. I think it has a tremendous possibility in the area of human services. And what I don't know is whether this thing can deliver. And Rishi, I disagree with you. I think we'll know in a couple of years. Whatever your metrics are, I think we'll, at least for some of us, we'll know that. So I would hope we can work with a professional company to tailor it to Ann Arbor, so even Al can be convinced that it doesn't take away from the things that are great about the community. So I'm going to support the resolution because I think it has that possibility, but I think we're going to have to be very careful about the organization we pick and how we manage that.
Personally, I think that if we do it, they should have Shaky Jake t-shirts. Any other discussion on this item?
I just wanted to respond to a couple things from Russ. First of all, that list isn't actually from the retreat. It started at the retreat, but we actually had a follow-up meeting where we only talked about priorities. And everybody showed up and we just did priorities. So it's not a retreat-based priority list. Second, I do think the idea of the patch to the system, I think that's a really good reason to not do the ambassador system. I think I absolutely would want to spend, if we do see holes in the system that we can actually identify very specific things, let's use these considerable funds to fix those things as opposed to coming up with a way to get around them or whatever it is. And then to the marketing point along those lines, this isn't the way, I mean, I feel like we're always preaching to show, not tell. So yes, absolutely the folks around, that may become our biggest fans and may move and move businesses and come shopping and do all the things we want to happen in the downtown. We absolutely want to get those people that are, slight users or sometimes users, and we want them to be more, or never, but are thinking about it. But I think having an ambassador system is basically telling them how cool we are, as opposed to just being really cool, and that these funds would be better spent on things that actually make our downtown cool and a place everybody wants to be, as opposed to hiring people to walk around and tell them how cool it is, which is essentially, that's how I feel about it. This is your uncle telling you that you're radical, as opposed to your uncle just taking you somewhere that's awesome. And then I guess the only consistent problem that I hear come up that this would address. That when I listen to the conversations, I've been to many of the discussions, not all of them, but when we do say, you know, what is the problem we're addressing, I don't hear much in response other than the one consistent, which is, you know, there are people out on the streets that need help. You know, we look out our retail window and there's somebody asleep in the planter and they need help. And if that is the problem that we're addressing with, you know, everyone who has businesses, I'm on Main Street, but I'm a story up, so I don't see it as much. If that's the problem we're addressing primarily, again, I think there's better, more direct ways to address that problem than an ambassador system for $1 million.
So I think we need to move to
So
wrap things up.
Yeah, so for
Give Cindy
me,
the last word.
because my Main Street windows have been brought up several times. I do live at Lily Grace. I'm an entrepreneur. I've owned a business. I just celebrated this week my 3rd year on Main Street. And I do live there day and night, and I'm sometimes walking out of there at 3 o'clock in the morning, or sometimes I sleep in a spa bed. And, but I see a lot. I see who the new people are on the street, and I also have a gentleman who recently walked in who got disoriented because Siegfried had closed, and he wanted to get his watch fixed, and he might not have been downtown for a little bit. He lived in Arbor Hills, and a nice gentleman. And then when I asked for assistance after I sent my staff out to look for his car, you know, I asked for assistance and called the police, and they're busy. They have other things, and they don't see, you know, Mr. Packard as being, you know, that important. They didn't even want to get out of the car. So it's not only the Mr. Packards who is a resident of downtown Ann Arbor. It's not only those guests who come who don't know how to do the parking meter, and you've caught me feeding the parking meter several times on the street. And it's just, there's just, I just think it makes it cohesive as someone from Ann Arbor being that friendly city. I think it's so important. I think I see new things happening in the alleyway, and when I pull out of the 4th and William parking structure at 2 o'clock in the morning, I see that black Charger right there with a bunch of kids, and I see people going up to the very top. So, I mean, I see things that happen every day, but I can't personally do everything myself, and I just think it's important. I really do. I'm going to vote on it.
So would these ambassadors be there at 3 in the morning?
We haven't worked out those details. It depends on where we want to put our emphasis.
I mean, I get it, and I also think it has to be a professional program because, you know, volunteers are great, but they have to be trained. And that's going to cost money and all of the equipment that goes with it. So if you have someone that already has bruised and fell down and picked themselves up and I think they can customize it to Ann Arbor.
So I'm going to support the program, but I do want to express my appreciation of the very robust discussion there's been, both at committee meetings and at this meeting in particular. I think that oftentimes folks in the public don't realize how much robust discussion we have in our committee meetings, because so often we come to these meetings and have a unanimous vote. You know, I think folks can realize that we do have a lot of discussion about things, and oftentimes we come to sort of compromises. This one's a little more challenging in my mind because it is a little scary because it is moving into something a little different than DDAs typically go into. You know, this notion, it's not bricks and mortar, it's people, feet on the street. So I think it's an interesting, exciting, but in many ways challenging prospect. But again, I just appreciate, I think it's very healthy for folks in the public to sort of see all the issues and all the viewpoints, and puts it all in perspective. So thank you to all of you.
We should also probably strike from the minutes that Cindy feeds the meters, just for her sake.
Steve.
Thank you.
I appreciate the work of the Operations Committee. I'm not a committee attendee. I think Sandy made a good point, though, that even though as a DDA we operate by committee, I think this is an important enough decision where no one should assume that a vote in favor of this resolution today means we're not gonna have another vigorous debate when this comes back to us. The metrics, the scope of service, the details, to the extent those details can be negotiated, are gonna be very important, and I'm certainly very comfortable and willing to listen to what the operations committee has to say. I mean, that vote is still gonna be a vote based upon what I think is best, not a deferral to the operations committee's belief on what is best. So this last resolve could be read as, this is the decision, and I just wanna be clear that I think that the next time we talk about this is gonna be as important, if not more important, than today's discussion.
So let's do this. Let's be sure that if this resolution is supported today, that before it comes back to the full board, not only would the detailed plan come back to the operations committee, but let's make sure that it's distributed. As much information as we can make available is distributed ahead of the board meeting to all members. Does that seem reasonable? Make sense? Okay. Yeah. Roger, I'm going to leave you with the last word if you have anything.
No, I think everyone has, said their, very eloquently stated what they believe and what they think. I think this is certainly one of the most discussed and debated issues I can ever remember on this board. Probably not correct. It seems like we spent more time talking about this than building a new parking structure. But I think it was a very good discussion. I think it shows that, to me, this is how a public body should work. Not everybody's going to agree on everything, but we're going to talk about it and get everyone's viewpoint. And if we can't come to a compromise, at least we're going to come to the best solution we can for the largest number of people who support something. So I've been very pleased with it, although it's been arduous, very pleased with the process. And I hear very clearly that the contract that comes back to the board is going to have to be very detailed on precisely the scope of work, the metrics, what are we getting, what are we paying for. And that needs to be not just discussed at the operations committee, but certainly distributed to the board and the community before it comes back for a vote. So I guess I'd like to thank everyone for all their time on this.
So Roger, along those lines, do we need to make a final clarification of what's in and what's out at the very end of, I think there was some discussion made about to undo what's crossed out, but
I think we could add back in the last, everything after the last comma, and the kinds of metrics that we use to assess the program's impact could be put in. Probably after the proposed contract and scope of services part.
So if we said for, in all caps, DDA board approval, with the kinds of metrics that will be used to assess program impacts.
Yeah, I would be fine with that.
Roger, could you read
and
it?
Report back to the
just
DDA with the kinds of.
I'm a little confused in the
Okay.
vote. I want to make sure Susan's.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, can you read it out loud as if all the edits were done?
And just start
Okay.
from the beginning.
Resolved, the DDA authorizes the Operations Committee to formulate the details of the program, select a recommended vendor, negotiate a proposed contract and scope of services, and bring this contract back to the DDA board for approval with the kinds of metrics that we use to assess the program's impacts.
That, I think the only other clarification, I thought earlier on, right at the beginning, it was clarified to say the DDA board authorizes.
Yeah, he said that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, when he just reread it.
I did it.
He didn't use the word.
Oh, I'm sorry.
when he
Yeah,
reread
just
it.
put in board
I
there.
just want to make,
Bring to
you
the
know.
DDA board for approval.
Sorry to be picky, but.
No, no, you're
I just
exactly
wanna make
right.
sure.
DDA board.
This matters a lot to everyone, obviously, so I just want to make sure everyone's as clear as we can be. Do folks feel comfortable that they understand the language is?
And again, point of order,
Yes,
that
sir.
is friendly to that is friendly to me.
Thank you, thank you. And I'm sorry, again, who was?
I
were
was
you
Roger.
this-
I
Okay, I'm
was
sorry.
Johnson
Okay,
seconder.
okay, so we're good. So, sorry about that. I kind of lost track in all that discussion about where we were. So are we all set to vote on this item?
Call the question.
Call the question. All
Nice.
those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Let's do a hand count, please.
So how about I do a roll call?
Let's do a roll call.
Oh, hey, that's
Yeah.
exciting.
Yeah.
Let's do that.
Let's do
I
that.
don't know what these are.
So much
Okay,
pressure.
roll call vote. Cindy Clark. And the question has been read as the resolution as stated, and by affirming, you'd be voting yes, and you would then be saying no if you disagree. So roll call, Cindy Clark,
Yes.
Russ Collins,
Yes.
Bob Gunzel,
Yes.
Roger Hewitt,
Yes.
Joan Lowenstein,
Yes.
Al McWilliams,
No.
John Mowat,
Yes.
Rishi Narayan,
No.
Keith Orr,
No.
Steve Powers,
Yes.
Sandy Smith,
No.
John Split.
Yes.
You do have a majority.
Great. Well, again, thank you very much for this good discussion. Lots of good points made.
Okay,
Right.
next, getting back to something that we all agree on. The Fort William Improvement Project update, DDA and Carl Walker representative met with city staff last week to review the project details. A site plan will be submitted to the city later this month, and later this afternoon, DDA staff and Carl Walker representative will be meeting with the Main Street businesses and residents for input on the construction plans. And I'll be happy to answer any other questions. Any questions anybody has about that project? Is Washington County parking contract next on the list?
Yeah.
Yes.
Again, we've had a request from the county to merge two existing parking contracts into a single new contract, and those discussions are continuing. And I believe that they're going to be at our next committee meeting.
Very good.
It
Anyone
may
have
be in
any
the
questions
company.
about that item? All right. Street framework plan. I think Susan already nicely spoke to where we are with the street framework plan, so let's move to invitation for DDA AATA Board Summit. Keith, you were gonna.
Yep, and this will be very quick given our lateness of the hour. Michael Benham came and spoke to us at the Hubs Transportation, talking about the idea of getting a summit meeting of the two boards, the AAATA and the DDA, to talk about the many topics of shared interest, and indeed, you know, those shared interests go back a long ways. We've done lots of programs with them. But this is to sort of look to the future to see which ones, what new programs we might be able to partner with them on. Things like the express bus from between MC and Ann Arbor, perhaps restoration of the link, and he actually came with a list of probably about 18 different things that we could discuss. So we are looking to do something like that. The committee members agreed it would be useful, and we're going to try and work something out that would be before our retreat in January. So it would be something in the second or third week of January. The idea being that we'd have some of those ideas in front of us as we look to try and figure out how we're going to spend the money we do have. So we don't have a date for that yet. I guess we're waiting on them at this point, or I forget where it was left.
We'll check with staff and get back to everybody.
Okay. There we go.
Maybe we should add AA to the front of DDA so we could have, 7 A's? And then when we go AA, DDA, AAA, TA. Okay, so it looks as though next committee meeting.
Wednesday, December 17th at 11 a.m. And that is again a change to work around holidays.
Great. Executive committee. Any conversation or discussion from members of
We
the
have
executive
anything to
committee?
report out?
All right, so the next committee meeting for executive committee is Wednesday, January 7th at 11 a.m. New business, establishing the 2015 DDA meeting schedule. Please review draft schedule, page 39.
So rather than hold everybody here, as much fun as that might be, we are getting late, we've noted where we think there are places we need your feedback, so Jade and I will be getting to you. Notably, November is going to be a tough one, given federal holiday, given Thanksgiving, and we'll also work with the operations committee members to figure out January, but no need to hold you today.
Yes, Sandy.
This is a subsequent thought to our earlier discussion. I would love it in the next, as we bring forward the metrics following up with that discussion. The funds that are currently used to tip that are paying for parking, which has been an ongoing concern by certain council members for sure, but to make sure that it's clear what funds are paying for what projects. Because it's easy to say it's coming from parking, but then we have TIF that's paying for some parking improvement things. So I want that, if that could be part of our discussion.
You want like a report?
Yep. Thank you.
Yeah, I suppose maybe that should even be a standing piece of any time we consider major expenditures. Be an interesting idea, as long as we are even-handed too.
And all of the way that the current ambassador program, or the ambassador program is being conceived as a core professional institution. Sandy's point about what the Parks Department does in terms of using volunteers, I think, could be very applicable in this particular case, where volunteers can be supplemental and enthusiastically supplemental and even critical to the overall success of the program. I do think that there's a significant role for volunteers, and that should be considered as a dynamic part of this as we move forward when we're talking professional contractors.
I agree.
All right.
I'm sorry, as long as I was asleep doing something else when communication from DDA board members came around. The State Street Area Association is having its annual holiday breakfast next Tuesday morning, December 9th, 8:30 a.m. at Cottage Inn Original Restaurant. And all DDA board members and staff are invited. I hope some of you come.
Thank you. So, any more robust conversation today? All right, are we ready to adjourn?
I move we adjourn.
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed it. Other audience participation. 4 minutes.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for all of the participation of this discussion. And I want to say it again. I'm 100% support $300,000 each year, hopefully $900,000 million. Go ahead with the ambassador program. And I also appreciate Al and John and Sandy Smith and other people pointed out. And I really appreciate Ray lead the citizen committee to discuss and give some other alternatives. But I don't support $150,000 because of this is the thing. Not only we have to do it, we have to do it very well. We have to lead this nation. Not only Ann Arbor can catch up and do the number one, which is move this ambassador program to the 21st century from 20th century. And also, I also appreciate that Sandy Smith lead the volunteer, and she is going to do the work for us. I'm also appreciate that Al can, as an opera geek, can use this ads to support the things, make another layer, which is ambassador light. I'm going to talk more detail. Ann Arbor people are not scared. Let's just rephrase two presidents of this country, FDR, 1940. He said that it makes sense to do something new and try it. If we fail, try another one. But above all, try something. And later, 40 years later, JFK said that we selected things not because of the easy, but because of hard. So as President Obama. And other people should really know that. It's 2005. This city put the street light, the best street light, on the street, LED. But we 10 years behind other cities. We haven't put LED in the art format, light up art we're a little late. Yes, we need discussion more, but something have to move ahead. We have to do it. We have to cross the river, even we touch the stone. And also appreciate the leadership here, right? And two of the members of the leader of State Street and Main Street, and also the business people, consider not just like Richard pointed out. This is strategic. It's not just for years. It might be 10 years or forever. I like to say that this is something which is too long to discussion. You need to do it, then you know what is wrong. And just like FDR said that, try another one. But not another thing I want to point out about volunteerism. This volunteerism is need the people, the University of Michigan students, programmers, also volunteer to make these things which is we want to support Ambassador Light. Something support the physical, tangible with intangible, and also the digital. So again, I fully support, move forward, make the metric detail, like Russ pointed out. There are a lot of things we have to really do the things based on the failure, part of the success, part of failure of Liberty Square. Please, let's talk a second step. Talk about the detail. Talk about what thing we can do of Ann Arbor people, Ann Arbor downtown. Thank you.
All right. On that note,
I
we
move we
ready to-
adjourn.
Second.
all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those against? No one against?
Abstain. Well, just because I'm going to sit here on my computer and do work, so you guys just want to hang out here too. We have a little discussion.
I was going to speak publicly.